Welcome back to Power in Politics with the Power Panel. Marcella Monroe, Amanda Alvaro, and Tim Powers. This time last year, the Bloc Québécois had no leader. Martine Ouellette resigned in June 2018. She lost a confidence vote after 7 of 10 sitting Bloc MPs left the party earlier in the year over her leadership style. A year later, and the Bloc, led by former PQ MNA and Minister Yves-François Blanchet, looks like it has been revived, or at least partially so. The party is polling at about 20% in Quebec and could be a game changer in this fall's election. Many are looking at the dwindling fortunes of the NDP in La Belle Province, but is the Bloc more likely to pick up those seats than the Liberals or Conservatives? Tim, that's kind of the big, this is sort of the X factor right now in Quebec, and we know how important Quebec is.
Well, I think that the one thing that has been true in the polling, and we've seen this with our company Abacus, is that the NDP is way low, like way low behind the Green Party. I think we had them in the last poll, 5th place, which is a real warning sign. We've also had the Bloc up around the 20s, so they are growing. So yes, you're going to have some three-way races. I think it's a bit, perhaps for the Liberals, somewhat disappointing to see the resurgence of the Bloc. I think they're more directly impacted, again, depending on where they line up with those NDP seats. For the Conservatives, they'll be somewhat concerned, but I think they're content that the regions they're focusing on around Quebec City and Maxime Bernier's area, the regions that have produced traditional Conservative seats, maybe aren't as contentious, but we all did think the Bloc was gone, which then gets to the national math. So the Liberals were looking to win a lot of seats in Quebec. Does this uptick of the Bloc prevent that from happening? Because there was a de facto assumption, probably wrongly made, that the Liberals would pick up a lot of those NDP seats. It's still a lot can happen, but there's.
I just wonder, is it necessarily, Marcella, the Liberals that suffer because of the uptick for the Bloc? Is it the Conservative? Is it a mix? I don't know. What do you think, Marcella?
Well, I think, as we know historically, Quebec's politics are very regional in itself. So I think, my reading of the current moment is that the Bloc is going to be looking to fight. They'll fight the Conservatives in some of those rural ridings and some of those Quebec ridings, and they will also be fighting New Democrats to take back some of that traditional separatist/social democratic vote in other places where the NDP, to Tim's point, has become quite weak. I got to cover the 2004 election. I was part of the roaming teams that CBC had, and I spent a week with the Bloc. And what's amazing when you're on the ground with them is how focused they are, because they can be, right? So if you think about our national campaigns and the way national war rooms have to pay attention to, different issues arising in BC or Ontario or Atlantic Canada, the Bloc has one province to worry about. They're very strategic on how they break those ridings down. They're very targeted. They don't tend to go in and raise issues where they don't need to or play in games they don't need to. That was the most relaxed campaign I've ever been a part of in terms of the political leadership. And I think that this is boiling up to be a pretty good example of that for them, where they're going to be able to be very choosy. And in some of those close races for them, for all parties, in fact, but for them, that 500-600 votes is going to make a big difference.
Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that this is one of those cases where campaigns really do matter. The message is going to matter a lot. Issues that are going to be important, will gain momentum, will be the issue or kind of the zeitgeist of the moment. Those things will matter. I mean, the Liberals have 40 seats. They're looking at the remaining 38 seats. We know that of the Bloc, the current 10 incumbents of the Bloc are all seeking re-election. So really, there's going to be a lot of shift in attention toward those 15 NDP seats. So, candidate recruitment is going to be really key. Who resonates at the local level versus, who would make national headlines. And also we know that all of the parties are really gearing up to have a strong Quebec presence. That means, ads that are dedicated to the Quebec audience. Those things are already underway. So a lot at play, and certainly everybody's going to be watching Quebec because it could be the make or break on how those votes swing.
Two other things to this, right? So the Conservatives did recruit Michelle Gauthier, who was a well-known MP, Bloc MP leader for a while here in Ottawa. So they're hoping to have some traction with the Bloc. And there's always, going back to the Brian Mulroney days before Lucien Bouchard left and created the Bloc, there's always been an attraction in certain quarters of Quebec to certain Conservative policy ideas. Certainly the dairy play is one that may resonate for Andrew Scheer there. We won't talk about the food guy. We did that last week.
Or we can.
Or we can. The other thing that's interesting is there was this bit of disruption in Quebec in the provincial election. So have the Bloc been able to recast themselves in the vein of the CAQ, not like the old Bloc. And certainly if you look at some of the candidates that are there and some of the things that they're saying, they're all talking about supporting Quebec's Bill 21, whereas all the other federal party leaders we talked about this last week have criticized it, albeit in muted tones, but the Bloc is out there on the forefront saying, we want to be part of this, we support what the government's doing. So that may be something that helps drive the resurgence.
I would add two other dynamics to that. Like, one is I think this is a broader version of what Tim's saying regarding Bill 21. The Bloc has the ability to just campaign to be the best voice of Quebec.
Yes, yeah.
Last campaign they were campaigning on a very separatist platform. Now they can just, on any issue, they can take this very Quebec position. I would also remind folks that they did a masterful job in 2015. They kind of tortured Mulcair. Every time he said something in Alberta or British Columbia that they knew wouldn't play, they replayed it in Quebec. And so they will do that to all the federal parties. The second issue I would just say is the environment. So we have a Bloc leader who is the environment minister. It's an issue near and dear to his heart. It will be interesting to me to see how that issue plays in Quebec.
Okay, I got to go. I'm out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much to the Power Panel. Thanks to Marcella Monroe, Amanda Alvaro, and Tim Powers. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.